or the boy's eyes are just a little astigmatic, or the doctors concluded that he was dying. To confirm his judgment, House pulled out his own cane straight away for the boy to grab hold of. The result is a crutch that's close at hand, but the boy's hand was not working well enough to hold onto it. It reinforced House's instincts. Then he hurried back to his office, rummaged through the bottom of a drawer, and found a case from 12 years ago. This medical record documents a man in his 70s. From the time he was admitted to the hospital to the time he died, it was only 24 hours. And the old man's initial symptoms were exactly the same as the little boy's. But House didn't have time to diagnose the cause. It's been a problem for him for years. The old man's course at that time went through 7 stages, and the boy has developed the first 2. Fail 1, and the boy has already appeared in the first 2. Mike Lutter, and the boy has appeared in the first 2.
那就是谢谢和
That's when the blood drains and the brain loses control of the muscles. The aide thought the boy might just have gastroenteritis, but House insists it's a rare form of lipogranuloma. Only 200 cases have been recorded worldwide so far. I then ordered an immediate colonoscopy for the boy. Look for purple pimples in the gut. If there is, it's a lipogranuloma. And instead of a pimple, we found what looked like a blood blister. Blackie immediately used a biopsy needle to remove a little bit for examination. To House's dismay, however, it's just a regular blood blister, not a pimple. House was confused for a moment. Still, he didn't deny his judgment. According to the symptoms of the elderly in that year. The next course is kidney failure. And this time House was right. The brown urine in the boy's urine bag is proof of that. The aide immediately offered to do a kidney biopsy on the boy. But House stopped him. Thinks it's time to determine the real cause of the boy's illness as soon as possible. The team discussed a number of possibilities. Eventually, House decided to get an MRI on the boy first, to determine if it's a lymphoma. But the boy's a little nervous about his first test. After all, he's only 6 years old. So Blackie called his parents in, with Mom's soft, soothing voice. The boy finally calmed down and cooperated with the examination. Instead, the results showed no lymphoma in the boy's brain. At this point, House knows. PYTE. At this point, House knew. The only thing they have going for them is the ability to anticipate the next step in the progression of the disease. The next step is liver failure. So he hurriedly asked his assistant to give the boy the use of all available hepatoprotective drugs, successfully stopped the deterioration of liver function. Yet before the crowd could catch their breath, the boy is having trouble breathing again. This means that the disease has progressed directly to the final stage. House never expected it. A DADHHH House never expected it. The boy's condition surprisingly skipped 2 stages. Less than 2 hours left to die. He made an emergency call to Wilson, his best friend, who was playing cards. As an oncologist, Wilson thinks Kawasaki disease is the most likely. This disease causes the immune system to make antibodies that eat away at the arteries. This in turn destroys the blood supply to vital organs. This corresponds precisely to the order of development of the boy's symptoms. Can be detected by cardiac ultrasound after. And they were disappointed again. No blood clots were found in the boy's body. Kawasaki disease speculation debunked again. But here's the weird thing. Instead, they found a tiny mass in the boy's right ventricle. It's a new clue that hadn't been noticed before. House immediately decided to just cut off a little bit of the mass and biopsy it. DXYR equals CFE601. House immediately decided to cut a little bit of the mass directly for biopsy, despite his careful maneuvering. But due to the boy's extreme physical weakness, his heart stopped during the sampling. The situation has become very urgent. Hurry up with the plates. Hurry up. All right. Code Blue ISO room. After 8 minutes of resuscitation. It'll. UN the boy's heartbeat is finally restored. 11 ITAI. Ian boy's heartbeat finally restored. House then continued to take samples. Although the aide thought it was too dangerous for him to do so. But House managed to get a sample regardless. Leukemia. Then he listed 7 possible conditions on the whiteboard. NCUA-JVU. Then he listed 7 possible ailments on the whiteboard. There are only enough samples for 3 tests. Faced with only 3 chances, the team chose tuberous sclerosis carefully and cautiously. Both MA and anomalous cell proliferation. Both Ewelmia aploma and abnormal cell proliferation. Both Sapcomata and the abnormal cell proliferation. However, after testing, both conditions were ruled out. Only the last sample remains for one of the 5 remaining possible conditions. 5 choices. House felt the pressure mounting. He went to the hospital room to check on the dying boy. I prayed that the tragedy of 10 years ago would not happen again. And then I went out on the balcony alone to let in some air. At that moment, Wilson, who had just finished playing cards, came to his side. To ease House's frustration, Wilson told him about the win he had just had. He's got a good hand, but he's keeping it quiet. Or then just call and don't raise until your opponent is all in. Finally, he showed his card. It's a pair of A's. Watching Wilson with a fluttering brow, House's mood has changed for the better. But then suddenly something occurred to him. Aces are always hidden. House found his assistants. He announcing the need to retest for lipogranulomatosis. Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard that. Wasn't lipogranuloma ruled out when we did the first test? But House says the reason the previous colon biopsy was negative. It's because the disease hadn't affected the intestines yet. And this time, they're going to target the last piece of the sample. Perform tests for lipogranuloma. Everyone's heart was in their throat. House even turned his back on the result. But this time, Lady Luck has finally favored them. Or the samples turned the red color they wanted. CD68 positive. 68 positive CD. ET. For initiation of treatment. As targeted treatment unfolds. Or the boy is gradually recovering. A decade-long illness that had been buried in House's mind had vanished. The paranoia and obsession of a genius saved a 6-year-old's life. It also remedied a regret he'd left unresolved for years.